So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about a topic today, which I'm very, very passionate about, and I know is a very important topic. And the reason as to why this is an important topic is because this is undoubtedly something that each and every one of you as coaches, you are going to have to deal with this at some stage throughout your coaching journey. And that is your client's fear of rejection. Have you ever experienced the fear of rejection? Is that something that you can relate to in any way? One thing that I really want to emphasize, something that's very, very important, is that even as coaches, we are still human beings, right? We are not the finished article. We're not perfect. We're not completely resilient to limiting beliefs. We're not resilient to challenges and hurdles and things that hold us back mentally, emotionally, physically. We're human beings. And just because on today's episode of the Coaching Masters podcast, we are going to be diving deep into what fear and rejection really is, and the fear of rejection, and some techniques of how to overcome that, it does not mean in any way that it's something that we are then completely resistant to because we're human beings. So for all of those coaches that are listening to this, don't ever think that even if you feel the fear of rejection, or you feel any of these limiting beliefs, or you have any of these limiting thoughts, that must mean that you are not meant to be a coach, or you're not cut out to be a coach, or you wouldn't make a great coach, because that is complete and utter bullshit. Right? I am one of the coaching masters. I'm one of the founders of the Coaching Masters. I've spoken on so many stages across the world, some of you of which would have seen me live and in the room. And I talk about this topic on a constant basis, the topic being coaching, mindset development. And do I still have the fear of rejection in my own way? Yes, of course I do. And that is why I use these techniques that I teach other people. Does my confidence ever get knocked? Of course it gets knocked. Do I ever feel anxious? Absolutely, I feel anxious at times. Do I ever feel unfocused? Do ever I feel like I've let myself down? Do I ever feel directionless? Yes, of course, absolutely. But I utilize and use these tools and techniques that I teach in order to allow me to overcome that stuff. And that is the reason as to why I know they work. Not because I'm Mr. Perfect, because Mr. and Mrs. Perfect do not exist, nor would they really be desirable people to be. But it's because I do have my own adversities and I push through them with the techniques that I teach you. So one thing that I really want to emphasize, guys, is that even with your clients, they do not need to be under this false impression that you are flawless. Definitely not. One of the main reasons as to why I was very successful when I was just a standalone coach. Now, of course, I run the Coaching Masters. I'm more of a teacher, a trainer, a mentor, and I qualify people as coaches. But when I was a coach, and that's what I did full time, one of the reasons why I was very successful at that is because of my sheer level of transparency, right? I think one of the worst things that we could possibly do is try to hide behind this false curtain of perfection. It doesn't fucking exist. And all that happens is that we feel uncomfortable hiding behind this curtain. And the person on the other side of the curtain thinks, what the fuck are they doing hiding behind that curtain? It doesn't make any sense. Don't try to hide behind the false curtain of perfection just because we're life coaches, confidence coaches, mindset coaches. Be transparent about your own journey. Be transparent about your own flaws, your own setbacks, if they indeed come up in conversation. You're not there to be Mr. and Mrs. Perfect, because those people don't exist, and people, especially in 2021, they do not want that, okay? So anyway, just before we dive into the whole rejection thing, I just want you guys to really embrace that and really know that you don't need to be perfect. Now, what we're going to be talking about today runs a hell of a lot deeper than what we have time for, okay? I just wanted to warn everybody about that. This runs a lot deeper than what we have time for. So I'm going to be introducing you to a model, and that is indeed what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be introducing you to the idea of the model. But what I want to start doing with this as well is I want to start encouraging you to take these sessions further. I want to start encouraging you to take these lessons further and go out there. And don't forget, there's so much incredible content within the Coaching Masters membership and within the Coaching Masters as a whole. I want to also be encouraging you to go from the podcast into the membership area to divulge and engage in as much of that content as possible. And some of what I'm going to be talking about today is inside of the membership area, along with a ton of other really, really high value trainings. And also some of what we're talking about today is also on some of our courses. So I just want to give you a bit of an introduction to it instead of like a full-blown, in-depth 4, 5, 6 hour lecture. I want to just give an introduction so that we can understand how this stuff works. So the fear of rejection is a very, very interesting thing. Now, when it comes to the fear of rejection, there's something very, very ancient inside of us, right? There's a very ancient part of our brain, which is called the amygdala. Now, I couldn't say that word for a long time because when you say it written down, it's not quite obvious as amygdala, but that's what it's called, the amygdala. And I used to call it the amygdala, all sorts of fucking crap. But the amygdala, right? I finally cracked it. It's called the amygdala. It's this ancient part of our brain that is responsible for the fear response, i.e., when we deem ourselves to be in a dangerous situation, the amygdala kicks in and it tries to prevent us from doing something that may bring us harm. This amygdala is actually very, very useful because the amygdala will stop you from walking out in front of traffic, right? Because the amygdala will show you that that is a dangerous thing for you to do, and it will fill you with fear at the idea of stepping in front of a bus. The idea of stepping in front of a bus should, rightfully so, scare the shit out of us because we know that it's going to put us in physical danger, and actually it will more than likely kill us. So when we think about stepping out in front of a bus, the reason why we don't do it is because the amygdala signals down into our bodies and makes us feel fear. So the amygdala is not all bad, right? It's not all bad. It's actually very, very useful. However, it originates from a time in which we were constantly faced with multiple dangers, right? Now, as always, I want you guys to have a very particular type of mindset with this. I want you to have the mindset that you are learning these models to be able to relay them to your clients, but at the same time, use them on yourself, okay? So if you have ever felt the fear of rejection, which I know we all have and all still do in some way, I want you to apply this to yourself as well as applying it to your clients. So anyway, the amygdala comes from a time in our lives where actually we were faced with some very, very real dangers. Very real dangers indeed. For instance, there was a time where being part of a community literally kept us alive because it kept us safe from the elements and it kept us safe from other violent tribes and it kept us safe from the wilderness and the beasts that wanted to rip our face off, the saber-toothed tigers, the bears, the mammoths that really wanted to genuinely kill and eat us, right? So once again, the amygdala, its birthplace, its original place of inception comes from a very useful, valuable place, right? To keep us safe. In which case, what is the problem? The problem is that the amygdala has not quite evolved with the times, right? It's not kept up with modern day. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that the amygdala will create a fear response within you that is as equal if we are about to step out in front of a bus or we're about to send somebody a message on Facebook. Now, why, you would say, hang on a minute, what the fuck? How is one of those in any way related to the other, right? And I tell you how they're both related. They're both related because when you really, truly boil it down, they are both in some way convincing us that they are putting us in danger. And anything that is going to put us in danger the amygdala is responsible for trying to stop us from entering that zone of danger. So you might think, well, hang on a minute, how on earth could sending somebody a message on Facebook put me in danger? How on earth could going on a date put me in danger? How on earth could starting a new job put me in danger, right? Physical danger where I might potentially die. Logically, you know that isn't the case. But psychologically, as far as the amygdala is concerned, it is the case. And I'll tell you why. Because what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. Now, the example I like to give with this is like that of a hedgehog. A hedgehog, it's got those spikes, right? It's got those thorns on its back, and that keeps it safe, right? And as long as it's belly down, back up, then it cannot be hurt. But as soon as it exposes its soft underbelly, then naturally it's in a very vulnerable place. So what that hedgehog does is it keeps itself safe by keeping that shield up, right? Because as soon as you expose the soft underbelly, then we're in a vulnerable situation. And once we're in a vulnerable situation, then we're no longer safe. So vulnerable situation automatically relates to not being safe, right? That is the short answer of what is actually quite a long and complex model. But for the sake of this podcast, I want to go for the short answer. I want to go for something that we can immediately understand. I'm not going to completely dive into all of the details of the model. I want something that we can just understand instantly on the spot and utilize some tangible information. So vulnerability equals danger, right? That is the one equation that I want us to remember right here, right now, because that is what is causing the fear of rejection. Because rejection, once upon a time, would have meant physical, grave danger. Once upon a time, if we were rejected by our peers, then that would mean that we were out in the cold. We were on our own and we were defenseless. And there was once a time that if we were on our own, we were defenseless and we were out in the elements in the cold, we absolutely 100% would die. Therefore, being rejected is, in that instance, literally life-threatening. Now, even though we know that that's not the case today, logically, psychologically, our amygdala does not know that that is still not the case. That is why we fear rejection so much, because really what it does is it creates a certain feeling inside of us. And that feeling is a feeling of fear. And we don't like the feeling of fear, right? It's not what we want. It's not what we want to experience, because fear is the number one thing that truly holds us back. So what do we need in that instance? What do we need? We need our own version of the spikes on that hedgehog's back. We need defenses that will help us protect our vulnerability and help us protect the soft underbelly of which we don't want to expose and be in a vulnerable, dangerous situation. Putting yourself out there publicly, right? Such as speaking on stage, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great example, because what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a position to potentially, and I'm going to keep really stressing that word, potentially, because it's going to become an important part of this entire process. You're putting yourself in a position where you could be criticized, you potentially could be judged, you potentially could be disregarded or outcast, right? And once again, there's no point me saying to you, don't be scared of that. That's not worth being frightened of, because your amygdala is going to fully overpower whatever I say, right? Your amygdala will completely overpower me if I just simply tell you, don't be scared. Even if I gave you a logical explanation as to why you shouldn't be scared. Well, you shouldn't be scared because actually all of these people in the audience, they've all got a smile on their face. They're all very engaged. They're all looking forward to hearing from you. They're all very nice. That's still not going to cut the mustard, right? I don't know if that's the right saying, but that is still not going to be enough, because your amygdala is really fucking powerful, right? It's really powerful. So by me simply saying that, it's not going to do anything. So what we need to do is we need to create defenses, because as far as your amygdala is concerned, you standing up there on that stage is putting you in a place of danger, because it still lives back in the caveman days. It thinks, if we get rejected by this community, I'm going to be out on my ass, right? I'm going to be out in the cold and we're going to die. Prospecting, that is definitely one, because once again, what are you doing? You are putting yourself potentially in a vulnerable situation because of potential rejection, potential no's, potential criticism, potential judgment. Think about us in the caveman days. What would have been the reasons as to why we were outcast by the tribe, by the group, by the community, if we had done something that allows us to stand out from the crowd? There was a time when we wouldn't have wanted to stand out from the crowd because it puts us in a vulnerable position. And still, a lot of people still share that, because when we stand out, we're in a position to be criticized, to be judged, and to be outcast. So yeah, prospecting is one of those. Now start thinking about what all of these things have in common, right? In terms of speaking up on stage, the dating scene, prospecting, every single one of them, every single one is the exposing of the soft, vulnerable underbelly, right? Exposing who it is you really are. And therefore, opening up yourself to criticism, judgment, and being pushed aside. Now, when we really boil those things down, what we can do is we can go on a logical process. I'll tell you what a coach would do, and I'll tell you what a coaching master will do in a situation like that with their clients. A coach would go through the logical reasons and explanations of why those individual things are not a threat to your life. Why, if you're rejected by that date, it won't actually threaten your life. Why, if you're rejected by that audience, it won't actually threaten your life. And there will be all of these tremendous logical explanations, right? But that's not going to cut it. What a coaching master will do, which is what I'm going to teach you how to do in a minute, is a coaching master will help their clients create the thorns on the hedgehog's back, create the defenses needed to step into those environments with no fear of rejection, because they have a solid fucking defense. And I'm going to teach you how to do that in a minute. But notice prospecting, the dating scene, talking up on stage, going live on Instagram is another one. They all share the same thing. Being criticized on Facebook. And there is one of those, isn't it? Criticism, being outcast, being judged, standing out from the crowd. The amygdala thinks you're in physical danger. Every single one of them has that exact same trait. Without the need of exposing the soft underbelly, there would be no fear of rejection, right? So what a lot of people would do is they would focus on the rejection itself. But really what we want to do as coaching masters is we want to go a couple of levels deeper and understand, where does this originate from? How can we solve the cause, not the symptom, right? Looking at the rejection itself is a symptom. The fear of rejection is just a symptom. It's a symptom of a much deeper cause. The cause being the exposure of the soft underbelly, the exposure of us as humans, who we are, what we think, what we feel, our level of expertise, our opinions, our viewpoint. It's all about that exposure of the soft underbelly. It's all about the fear of putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. Now, if you're in a vulnerable situation, what do you need to be able to not only survive the situation, but thrive through the situation? You need defenses. You need defenses. And I'm going to come on to this now. I know a lot of you are probably thinking, what are the defenses? Give us the fucking defenses. And I'm going to give it to you. I do promise, right? I am. But think about this as well. Think about martial arts, right? Or think about being able to be skilled with self-defense, techniques, or self-defense weapons even, I don't know. But imagine putting yourself in a vulnerable situation where somebody wanted to attack you, right? Literally attack you. And version number one, you have absolutely no way of defending yourself. You don't have any skill set in that instance. Or there's a second version of you that has skill set in self-defense, right? Version number 2, who has the defenses, they are of course going to be a lot more confident in the situation in which they're getting attacked. Does it mean they're completely immune to it? No, it doesn't. Does it mean they're completely resistant to the fear in total? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that they can enter that situation feeling more confident, more ready to defend themselves, with more clarity, more focus, and actually quite happy probably to do it again and again if need be. The version of you that has absolutely no defenses is the worst fucking thing that could possibly happen because you haven't created the defenses. We could understand the reason as to why we're getting attacked. We could understand the logic behind the attack. We could know everything about the attacker. And is that going to help us in that situation? Absolutely not. What's going to help you are the defenses. It's exactly the same when it comes to the fear of rejection. When it comes to putting ourselves in a position and a situation where we could very potentially be rejected, we might know everything there is to know about rejection. We might know everything there is to know about the other person. We might understand everything there is to understand about the emotion of rejection. But is it going to stop us from feeling it? It's not going to stop us from feeling it. The one thing that will stop us from feeling it is creating the defenses. So the defenses. This is what I want you to do with all of your clients, right? And this is what I also want you to do for yourselves, because this is indeed going to be a tremendous exercise for you to follow, right? There are a very few select things that I want you to write down, right? Now make a note of this. The first thing that I want you to write down is I want you to write down a list, okay? You're going to create a list of your skills / talents / attributes, right? Or abilities even. Skills, talents, abilities. I'll come on to attributes in a minute. Skills, talents, abilities. Now, the key with this is the first thing and the first place that our mind goes to tends to be external skills, right? Okay, well, I'm good at cooking. I'm good at playing football. I'm good at something external. I'm good at dancing. What we want to be looking at is we want to be looking at not only the external skills that you have, but also the internal skills. What are the internal talents? What are the internal attributes? You may very well be externally a good chef, good at playing football, a good dancer, but internally, are you good at forgiving? Are you good at listening? Are you good at understanding? Are you good at seeing the goodness in people? These are internal attributes, internal skills that all so often get neglected, get rejected, and get forgotten about because we can't see them. And that is a travesty. It's the same in that instance, in many respects. It's funny how we work as humans. I think it's because we're very visual. We also often need something to look at, right, in order to understand. But what's one very good example of not needing something to look at to understand that it has significance? What about those people that have a disability that we cannot see? That does not mean in any way that their disability is any less significant than someone with a disability who we can see. We can't see everybody's disability. It does not mean it is not significant and not affecting that person's life. Just because we cannot see it does not mean it is not there, does not mean it's not significant. And when it comes to internal attributes and skills and talents, that is exactly the same. So what I want you to do is I want you to pay very, very, very close attention to the internal skills that you have. Are you a good listener? Are you a good friend? Are you good at forgiveness? Are you good at feeling confident in a tough situation? Have you got good composure? Have you got good focus? And you know what? You don't need to be the best in the world at those things. And you, at this stage, or any stage, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you don't even need to tell anybody what's on your list. Even if you only do this for you, I want you to fully embrace what it is you're very good at. And I'll tell you why this is a very important first step. Because when we have a fear of rejection, what we are fearful of is that we will be rejected due to people seeing our flaws and therefore criticizing us. We fear that people will criticize, they will judge, and they will reject. And why would someone do that? They would only do that if they see something they don't like. They're not going to criticize, judge, and reject off of having seen something they do like, right? So when we have the fear of rejection, we are all so often focusing heavily on the attributes, the skills, the talents, whatever you want to call it, the parts of us that are not desirable. That's where our attention really, really rests, because we think of those things and therefore we fear being rejected. What we're doing through this process is we're taking your attention and we're shifting that attention away from the attributes about yourself that you think are negative attributes that could be seen as something worth rejecting. And we're moving that attention over to the attributes that you have, which make you who you are, the positive attributes, the skills, the talents, the abilities, to remind yourself of what it is you're really good at. Then what I want you to do, which is number 2 on the list, I would like you to create another list of your wins, your successes. And you know what? This does not have to be huge, gigantic wins. These are wins as far as you're concerned. These wins could range anywhere between being featured in Forbes magazine with a multi-million-dollar organization or business, all the way to the fact that you had fucking breakfast, lunch, and dinner in one day. Because I tell you right now, there are a lot of people around the world where that would be a gigantic win. And we never, ever, ever should underestimate that, right? Ever. It might be that you've got this incredible, your dream home that's worth however much, multi-millions of dollars or pounds, and you've got this incredible chauffeur and you've got a chef. They're all big wins. It might be the fact that you got out of bed this morning. That might be a fucking win, right? And every win is a win. Every win is valid and every win is powerful. And what I want you to do is I want you to list every single win that you've got. Every win, every success, right? No matter how big, no matter how small. And once again, you don't need to tell anybody this list. This is for you. List out those wins. By doing that, you're going to be reminding yourself again that actually you have a shit ton of value. And you do have a lot of value. How do I know you've got a lot of value? Because you're a fucking human being who's living and breathing and you're here listening to this. You've got a ton of value to give. And the value, a lot of that value hides behind the wins that we have completely neglected and forgotten about, right? So please make that list of wins. Then what I want you to do is I want you to create a list of your qualifications. Now, when I say that, I don't mean just the fucking high school diploma, the degree, the MBA. I'm talking about things that you consider yourself to be qualified in. There, I have a ton of qualifications. Does that mean that I've been given a certificate from some external body to tell me that this is a qualification I've got? I don't need that shit. I've got a ton of qualifications in things that I know I'm very, very good at. And what I want you to recognize is I want you to recognize that you are very, very good at many, many things. And even if you don't have some fucking piece of paper up on your wall from someone else telling you that you're good at that thing, you know that you're good at it. And that is a qualification as far as I'm concerned. So what I want you to do is I want you to list out the things that you feel that you are qualified to do. What are some of the things that you could talk about effortlessly with very little preparation? I'm going to say that again because that is actually a very important question for you to answer. What are some of the things that you could talk about effortlessly with very little preparation? And it could be anything. It could range from knowing everything there is to know about basketball all the way to being able to effortlessly talk about how you prepare your kids for school in the morning, right? It's just, there's not even a range. That's the thing. There's not even a level. It's just like all of that stuff is valid. They're all qualifications. It can range from that to that. So I want you to really fully embrace that there are incredible things that you are qualified to do. And you're not waiting for someone to give you a piece of paper to say you're qualified to do it. You're qualified to do it, right? So I want you to make that list. Number 4, I want you to recognize that you have overcome.